The audio is on, and if I press that button, we should be live. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us. Let us know if you can hear us and see us okay. Well, first of all, can you hear and see me? And can you hear and see Victor and David? Let us know in the chat. Good afternoon, both of you.
Hello, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, everyone. How is sunny Europe at the moment?
Very unsunny.
No sun to be seen.
Okay, yes, we have some sun here, so one for the UK. Excellent. Yes, and yes. Everybody can see and hear us okay. Great. So we're here today to talk about Perseverance episode 3 and 4, but we're actually going to be talking about the Perseverance series as a whole with a bit of a focus on 3 and 4, because 3 and 4 went live on GameFound yesterday. Unsurprisingly, it has funded, but that's not over. There's still plenty of time to go. And we're doing this video talking to 2 of the designers of the game to basically, just chat about Perseverance and the history behind it and certain other things about it. I've got a few questions myself that I've put together with a bit of help from Vicky, who gave me some questions earlier on, and some of my Patreon supporters. If you've got any questions for them, put them in the chat. I will try and see them and interrupt them. So the first question that I've got on the list of questions, if I pull that up on the screen, is for those people watching this video who don't actually know what Perseverance is. Tell us, what is it?
Basically, I would say it's a TV series in the form of a board game.
Okay.
That's the one sentence speech I would use here.
Right.
But besides that, it's a medium-heavy Euro. 4 medium-heavy Euros actually that share the same DNA, but each has their own specific mechanisms and own identities.
And another important thing is that this is extremely thematic, extremely theme-driven, but our main design paradigm is theme through mechanisms, as in you will not find a single read this story, you will not find a single quote. The only world shown to you is on a couple of pictures, on a couple of cards, and maybe a funny card title here and there, but you get the story because when you do something that's sending the explorers out in the jungle, then you'll pick up a piece that is called something like an explorer, and you'll put it on a place that's called something like a jungle. So we tell the story by literally doing those things on the table.
Yeah.
Yes, and each episode has its own story, but also there is like the transition between the 2 episodes also tells a story, right?
Yeah.
There are a couple of years between each episodes, and where we ended up in one and where we start from in the second clearly tells what has been happening over the past years and what's gonna await for you now in the new episode.
I think one of the difficulties that people had when episode 1 and 2 came out is because we've had so many narrative-driven, campaign-driven, story-driven games that have come out in the last X number of years. Perseverance is not that. Perseverance is not a narrative-driven game. You are not going to be reading a story. There isn't really a campaign where you level up your characters. It is 4 separate games that are connected via a shared storyline. But there is a campaign mode. But the campaign mode is like a separate thing on the side.
It's an extension. It adds extra new mechanisms to the game.
Yeah. So you can just play episode 3 as a standalone game. You can just play episode 1 as a standalone game. Exactly. They are connected together, as you say, in terms of the storyline. Yeah. And episode 4 is the last one, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah.
It is.
Very early on, we've been talking about an episode 5, but no.
Okay.
It's the end.
So I saw earlier on. Go on.
We knew where we wanted to end up, and we kept cutting it in like, okay, so that part of the story and that mechanism should fall into that episode, and then we saw that if you split it into 5, then either 3 or 4 would be boring.
Right. Okay.
So we decided to split it into 4 instead.
Right.
And after that, we joked that by 5 we should be building assembly lines and spaceships, and join Voidfall at the 15th house. But alas, that is not happening.
Okay. The Voidfall Perseverance crossover episode.
There might be promo fans, I don't know.
So I read on the GameFound page yesterday that Perseverance has been 6 years in the making. So working on the game.
Minecraft says.
That's what Minecraft says.
It's been 8 years in the making.
Right. Okay. So working on the game started pre-COVID, then continued through COVID, and is now going on, if I can say after COVID, even though we're not really after COVID. It's a multi-design team. There are 4 designers listed on the box, of which you two are 2 of them. So it must have involved a lot of remote collaboration. And I just want you to talk through the process of how it's been over the last 6 years or 8 years with having to change how you've worked together on it.
Shall I start at the beginning?
You can, yeah, sure.
In the beginning.
So the beginning was, I want to say, what's 2014 Essen, when Thomas and Wolf, the designers of Yido, came to me showing a prototype where I think it was an art dealership game, which had a mechanism where you were drafting actions from a dice pool, and one of the actions involved changing the colors of the dice to yours. Right. If you've played Dragon's Gate College from them, you know what else they've done with this mechanism. And I looked at that and I said, okay, I don't know why we're dealing in art, but if you want to score that dice pool after all the actions have been taken, that smells to me like people are voting after they came back from work. So this game should be about convincing the worker pool to vote for us in a democracy. Let's make it about democracy. It's like, okay, so ancient Greece, that's boring. Okay, so modern day America, that's gonna be controversial. Okay, so what should be about? And that's how a game called Thingvellir was born, which was about the first Icelandic parliament in the 9th century. And that was the game that we pitched to Mindclash 2 years later.
Right.
And Mindclash does what Mindclash does, and they asked, yes, but what about dinosaurs?
Yeah.
we asked it after a while. Mechanically, we liked it a lot, and we didn't discard the Viking theme right off the bat. But we knew that, I mean, Vikings at that time were pretty overused. They are on the back burner right now, but...
Yeah, there were three big and a few other small Viking games coming out in the Essen where we were pitching it to them.
Yeah. So we wanted basically a fictional society where democracy is fledgling, actually. It's building up. It's not yet established. And for that, we basically invented this new world of perseverance where you are on a dinosaur island. And you are actually being threatened by those dinosaurs, and the society is shaping up quickly out of necessity, sort of. But going back to the cooperation between the designers, I would say that the COVID itself didn't really set us back, because we've been working.
It made us a lot better.
Yes, we've been.
Oh, Victor's disappeared.
Oh, yeah.
David's still here.
Not the whole country. Yeah, I'm still here.
Okay.
So I'll take over the sentence. So COVID made us
he's back.
better because not
Is
yet.
he back?
Now he is. Hi, Victor.
He's back again. He disappeared for a minute.
Oh, okay. I'm so. What was the last word?
Oh, good question.
You started about what the COVID changed on our collaboration approach.
Not much is what my point was.
Right.
Because we've been working remotely.
So before that we were working in parallel, and then 2-3 times a year syncing up, and then hoping that our ideas were comparable, whereas lockdown taught us how to work remotely and purely digitally and everything. And now we just have meetings every 1 or 2 weeks, depending on how close we are to deadlines, and everybody's okay with just doing it on the fly.
Right.
Yeah, and what I was saying while I lost connection was that all 4 of us have a very different perspective when it comes to game design, and I think we complement each other quite well. For example, David and I are pretty good at thinking mechanically and implementing thematic ideas into mechanics and bouncing ideas back and forth between each other really quickly and working on implementations. Thomas is great at really out-of-the-box ideas, and he got us out of some really bad design ruts over the years. And Richard is the one who made this world, most of it at least, and he's very good at thinking thematically and adding theme to the mechanics that we are working on.
And flagging when we come up with something that turns the wheels but doesn't tell any story.
Right. So earlier on, Victor, you mentioned that, when summarizing the game, it was kind of a TV series. And one of my supporters, Lars, has said, is Perseverance just a transformation of the TV series Lost turning into Jurassic Park, reimagined as a board game? And the fact that you sort of introduced it as you imagine this as a TV series, then kind of, yeah.
Yeah, well,
we had
surprisingly, I have to admit, but I haven't seen Lost at all.
Okay.
So it was not. It couldn't really have been an inspiration, but I would say we were trying to think pretty much outside of the box, but at the time when we decided that we were gonna do episodes, we knew how the story would look. Like we didn't invent it on the fly like Lost did, so I hear. But yeah, we knew where that we wanted to end up at episode 4, and we wanted the ancients to return in episode 4, and we wanted an end to the story and possibly a way for our survivors to go home in episode 4.
Right.
That was there pretty early
wake up
on.
and find out they've been dead all along.
Because episode 4, you obviously told me a few secrets about episode 4 like 2 years ago, which I've been having to keep to myself. So remind me next time that I ask you to give me some secret inside information. Just say no, because I've been having to live with that and not tell anybody for the last 2 years. And it's actually been really painful. So
were we truthful? The important question is, did we tell the truth? Is that what we told you 2 years ago? What's in the game now?
Well, you said aliens.
Well, people from a different world / universe / dimension. So
yeah, I'll give you that.
They're human-ish looking. They're not aliens, as in. Yeah, the art concept, but they came from elsewhere is still there.
Yeah.
I mean.
So that's obviously the end result, and you had that idea from the start then. So you knew the story started with this luxury cruise liner crashing on this. There will be 4 episodes, and in episode 4 they're going to discover this, ancient race of people from another dimension, whatever.
Yes, and we've been hinting at their existence in every episode, basically. The temples are a strong hint, but if you look closely at some of the adventures, there are also hints there. So the thing is, they have been here. It has been their island a while ago, long ago actually. And now, because we meddled with something in the last temple to the north of the island, they finally have the chance that they've been waiting for to return. Because years ago they had to abandon the island and head home because they were at war, and this island was basically their training ground for war riders, because they don't have dinos. At least they did not, but now they do. They bred one dino that appears in episode 4, but they needed the troops, they needed the dinos from here, so they had to abandon the island at some point. And shortly after we arrived here, and then the rest is history.
Yeah. So Chrissy wants to know, what was the most difficult aspect of designing a multi-game series where there is a common link, and you mentioned earlier on that they share a DNA, but the games have to be different enough to each stand alone as an individual game?
Yeah.
That is exactly the hardest thing about designing a multi-game series, because the game has to be good, thematic, not boring, not cube-pushingly boring, but not dice-chuckingly random. It has to be good and logical to the previous one, but differently good, but familiar enough to not have to relearn the whole thing. Interact with the systems that aren't changed, interact with the systems that have changed, and need to do all of this to the standard of quality that you've come to expect from us. So at several times we've gotten the game to either 3 or 4 now, or 2 in the past. We've gotten to a point where this would be a completely good publishable game, but doesn't meet the standards that this project requires from us. And we just unpicked the game and redesigned a third of it to make it possible to meet all of these million requirements.
Yes, the core idea was that we wanted a very stable core of the game that doesn't really change across the episodes, because it's a heavy game, and we wanted people to have an easier time learning
Mm.
the basics of the game. And I think it's still there, but over the years, I think we did add more difference to the episodes than maybe we originally planned to, because we just it's really a theme first design, and whenever the theme made it necessary to make adjustments, then we did make those adjustments. For example, there's a new sort of assembly in episode 3. We were planning to keep the assembly for the whole for the whole series as a cornerstone, one of the cornerstones of the design, but we did receive some criticisms after episode 1 and 2 were released about it. I still think it's very smart, but I also think that the whole democracy and voting and political aspect is less and less relevant the more you zoom out of the island, and the more broad perspective you get. And episode 3 is all about a broad perspective, when you can just head out, explore the entire island. You are riding dinos, and I think, well, we thought that the voting is still in the game, the majorities are still in the game, but the assembly itself should no longer be that's important and
Mhm.
no longer have that much emphasis. So the emphasis is now on actually riding the dinos and heading out into the wilderness, while keeping the majority play as a completely valid secondary strategy too.
Mm. So yeah, so I mean, what Chris was asking is, it was a difficult thing to do, but you've actually adapted between the feedback that you got from episode 1 and 2 into 3 and 4. And that was the
Yes.
thing when I played episode 3 for the first time just last Sunday. Playthroughs on the channel if you want to watch it. Is the day before, because for those people who haven't seen it, JP, a friend of mine who lives nearby, he's the one who's had the game. He's been learning the game. He brought it here on the Sunday morning. We set it up, and he effectively taught me how to play, and then we played it. I did a little bit of background reading on the Saturday to refresh myself, because it had been quite a while since I played it, just to think, right, let's get the basics in my head so I can remind myself how to play. Right, there's a dice pool. You take dice out of the dice pool. When they've all gone, there's an assembly, and you do that 3 times. And JP said, no, it's not that. It's something completely different. And I'm like, oh, right, okay. But you've said that that was the original plan, is to have that core idea of a depleting dice pool. When they've all gone, there's an assembly. You do that 3 times, and that would be the end of the game.
And then what happened was that we came up with making the place a dino in the wilderness primary action, an equally important decision as placing a die. And the moment that happened, the when does the assembly happen became such a swingy decision that if you made it easy to trigger, easy to empty the pool, then it became an attack, basically trigger the assembly when the other player is unprepared. And if you made it hard to empty the pool, then the game was 80% through by the time the first assembly happened.
Right.
So we needed, and if we mandated the assembly, we just said every 4th turn there is an assembly, no matter what you do, then it was hard to keep track of. And more importantly, whoever took their last turn immediately before the assembly, if it was not guaranteed equal turns like it was in App 1 and 2, always won that assembly. Because in 1 and 2, you can plan to concentrate on this assembly, and that's because it's a clockwork. And 3 was not a clockwork, because your dino availability is subject to whatever you're doing.
Right.
So people said the assembly was too swingy. It's like, if it came up after my turn, you didn't stand a chance. If it came up after your turn, I didn't stand a chance. So by breaking it up into little bits, the compounding swinginess disappeared.
Yeah. Okay.
So the spirit of how it works is exactly the same. To us, it's a very incremental change. We didn't say, oh, the old assembly is bad, let's toss it out, let's make a new one. We said the old assembly is good, but we want to add this thing to it. And if we add this thing to it, and we want to zoom out, as Victor said, then we don't need to track the votes. We don't need to have that simultaneous picking. And then we might as well break it into 4 little assemblies to reduce the swinginess. So we're fixing problems while increasing thematicness at the same time.
Right. Okay. How much of 3 and 4 was done while you were doing 1 and 2, or did you design 1 and 2 and have rough ideas for 3 and 4, but not actually start working on them until 1 and 2 was finished, or did you actually start designing 3 and 4 2 years ago?
I think we've designed about 7 games by now. So
Okay.
And yeah, and originally, the original Thingvellir design was the very distant foundation of episode 3, actually. So we sort of designed two prequels first, and then we built episode 3 up from there.
Right.
but interestingly, mechanically, the current episode 2 is more similar to that Proto Perseverance than the current episode 3.
Okay.
So, and episode 1 started out as a tutorial. We literally cut off the map half of the game. We said, here's the city. Let's have some tower defense thing happening, and the rest is just the tutorial of the area majority. And then came the famous moment of, well, half of a good game is not a good game.
Right.
And we're like, okay, let's make this tower defense thing interesting on its own.
Okay.
And let's make it into a full game. And that's when the whole let's design a game theme first came, instead of just making it a tutorial for the actual game.
Okay. Interesting. So how much other changes did you make to episode 3 and 4 then, based on feedback from 1 and 2? You've mentioned the assemblies. Was there anything else, any other feedback that you took on?
I wouldn't say they are directly feedbacks, because 1 and 2 didn't get any feedback of this is wrong.
Mm-hmm.
It's more like both going through 1 and 2, and especially what Victor and I've been through on Voidfall since, where we thought we had a perfectly finished game, and then redesigned and then reopened it 4 times in another year and a half. It's just our own standards of when a game is done got so much higher, and we got so much better at immediately anticipating that we need to criticize our own sentences, instead of it becoming I get an idea and then the other coming back the next day saying your idea is actually shit, I'm sorry, and then being unhappy about it for a week and then restarting and then bouncing back and forth. Whereas now, the moment we say a great idea, by the end of the great idea, it's like, yeah, it's not good enough, we have to do better than this.
Right.
And it's just, we start from the obvious idea, and then we see that part is not good enough, and then we make the next obvious idea, and then it sort of escalates from there.
I know, I remember, I think the first or second time I'd played episode 2, I sent you a message, and I said, this is quite complicated, this is quite a step up from episode 1, please don't make episode 3 any harder. And you actually said to me at the time.
And at the time we were planning on making 3 harder, but we got so much more practiced at keeping complexity streamlined because of Voidfall, that while making 3 better itself, it got simpler.
Right.
Yes. So I think people are going to be surprised how streamlined episode 3 is. So I'm very proud of that, and I think streamlining is the name of the game these days when it comes to design, and we really wanted to get that through App 3 as well.
Yeah, I mean it's not a light game by any stretch of the imagination. I was just a bit concerned after 2 that if it stepped up again, it would be a little outside my comfort zone. And having played 3 now, I'm very happy to say, yeah, the complexity has come down a little bit.
Because to create strategic complexity by giving width.
Right.
And you have to learn 7 or 8 systems and understand what the rules of each.
Yeah.
3 has fewer systems than 2, and each system reaches further, but doesn't have more rules.
Right.
So we moved the heaviness of the game from rules to depth, which is an objective improvement.
Yeah. And I've not tried 4 yet. In fact, 4 is not available for anybody to try yet, is it? Apart from your internal playtesting team.
No, because we're not saying it's good enough yet to be judged.
Yeah,
we're still criticizing it ourselves.
Right.
But we do know what we want to do with it, both mechanically and thematically. Mm-hmm. And I think in a couple of months, before the end of the Pledge Manager, it's gonna be out for you to try.
Oh right, okay. So you're actively working on it right now.
Absolutely,
You're hoping to have a version
out. We had
a
3-hour meeting today.
Right. Okay.
Despite of how it looks on the game found page, we actually have a pretty tight timeline.
Okay. Cool. Well, I look forward to that then, because somebody did ask me earlier on. They said, "Am I going to be covering episode 4 on the channel?" And I said, "Well, I don't think so, because I don't think it's going to be ready." But obviously, it is. So, yeah, that would be cool. So, obviously, not by the end of this current campaign, but by the end of the pledge. By the end of the pledge manager.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Excellent. Okay, right. 2 questions now. First one, what part of the overall design of all 4 episodes are you happy with? Or most proud of?
Of the overall design of all 4 episodes.
Okay, I'll start with one random.
Yeah, start.
One emotional mechanism parallel that I really remember liking, and I wonder how I would do it today from episode 2, is in episode 1, when you allow a dino attack to breach, you get some penalty, and I might also get some penalty if my houses are high enough. It's a risk management mechanism both ways, we understand. In episode 2, when you attack my outpost, even if it gets overrun, you use my outpost and because of that the dinos overrun it, it is possible, based on the situation and how late in the game it is, that you are unhappy about it and I am happy about it, that it got overrun, that I am happy about it and you are unhappy about it, or that I don't care and you are happy about it, that you can immediately save me from the dinos that you let in. And that is both thematic, that tactically gives so many, and it's a very good example of how episode 2 gives a lot of smart complexity by immediately introducing width into one situation. Whereas in episode 3, something very similar to this is it comes in depth, and episode 3 doesn't do any immediate width springing up because it's just I go and explore on the map and do something. So you could react saying, "Damn it, I wanted to go there," or you could react saying, "Ha, now I can go explore the next node." So the same, we live in this world together, and both of us doing things that are bad for both of us are actually just different opportunities for the both of us are present. But episode 3 does it in a long-reaching strategic feel, while episode 2 does it in a branching tactical feel, while also being a big and heavy strategic game. So, and I remember how good that felt when I cheered that the person before me allowed the person after me to be attacked and didn't have enough soldiers to save them, so that I could save them and get the reward for saving them.
Right.
And that's storytelling through victory points.
Yeah.
And that's the dream for us.
Yeah, mine is quite similar to that. It's for me, it's the wilderness, and when we are talking about mechanisms, it's overarching mechanisms through the 4 episodes. It's the wilderness and how you interact with it in every 4 episodes, each of the 4 episodes, and the fact that, like David said, there is a lot of player interaction in different flavors in every episode. For example, in episode 1 is just a tiny slice of the wilderness you're interacting with, and dinos are coming at you. Then in episode 2, it's a bit broader perspective, and you're sort of racing, and there is this many-phased interaction between the players that David talked about. In episode 3, there is, I would say, almost like a cooperation, since you are discovering the jungle together, and if someone pushes the boundaries further, it's better for you usually. Whereas in episode 4, since you are being attacked by a foe, it's going to shrink back again. So your area that was available for you is shrinking, and it's smaller. And to access the things that you could access in episode 3, you have to fight them back, actually, because they do overrun your settlements. And again, it's a common effort. And you can free other settlements as well, and you can bestow others' actions for reward, of course, so the motivations are there. But again, it's a different facet of player interaction there as well. So yeah, I think the way the wilderness changes is really, really unique across the 4 episodes, and I like that a lot.
So that's the good stuff. Next question, and this is from Vicky. Vicky asked me this at lunch, so David, you can blame her when you see her at GridCon. What was the area of the biggest disagreement during the design and development process? If there was one. I'm assuming there was some kind of part of the game that you
I
disagreed
mean,
on.
there were several mechanisms that at one point one of us, usually me being the crazy one, was pushing for, and then the sane one in the room was saying, "No, don't do this. This is too much." And usually we ended up cutting it.
Right.
So,
To let the dog
but
out.
that's more of a working method for us than
Yeah.
an actual disagreement. So I can name several things that I actively fought for weeks, and then I said, "Okay, I ran out of reasons to fight for this. Let it go."
I think you fought pretty long for keeping the assembly the way it was in episode 2, didn't you? Maybe it was long ago.
I
But
remember flip-flopping between working hard to bring back the clockwork of assembly and then keeping it together, or making sure there isn't a clockwork and then breaking it apart. And whenever I had a problem with not having a clockwork, I fought for merging the assembly. And whenever I had a problem with merging the assembly, I fought for destroying the clockwork. So that was a long, hard fight. And every time we agreed on one, we were both very happy, and then sad again, and then happy again.
yeah, like having a fixed number of turns seemed so conventional that we didn't seriously consider it for a while, and obviously the previous assembly didn't work that way. So when we fell back to it, we realized that actually this is the right way to go when it comes to this new system, and we are actually quite happy with it now.
Right.
I mean, technically, F1 and 2 had fixed number of turns as well, but they were self-counting turns, and we were very proud of self-counting turns. And and then the idea of just having a turn counter came up, and I was like, "Are we that dumb?" So I think the linchpin for me was when we integrated that into the adventure system. It's like,
when I saw that, I was
now
like,
it's
"That's
hard."
genius!" Yeah.
It's like, okay, now I like it. So that definitely feels like, yeah. I know when we first came up with the idea of putting it in the top, I wanted something crazy and I wanted to integrate it into the artifacts. But it's like you can get artifacts on different turns, and then yeah, somehow one of us inspired the other to put the adventure cards there, and then everything became.
Cool.
I think our UI designer inspired all of us to drop that idea because it was pretty impossible to do.
Well, that's
so yeah, it's such an integrated process. Is like we the designers do the UI design the moment we create it, and then we give it to the actual UI design team who do it well. Yeah. And if they come back saying you try to put 3 icons into 1.5 millimeters, then we redesign the game.
Yeah.
Tropical Penguin is in the chat and is just saying, will there be a lore of what was happening between episodes 2 and 3, as there is a couple of years gap?
Oh yeah, we will have a lore book for episodes 3 and 4 as well. And
okay,
that will tell that story as well.
Cool. Next question, and this is another one from Vicky, so you can thank her for it. Is what is your favourite dinosaur in the game? Because they've all got unique uses and features and what they do.
Well, I think I'll go with the 6 legs, the new one that the ancients bred themselves, because it has 6 legs. So, I mean, all of the other dinosaurs are like actual dinosaurs with a little twist, but this one is a really mean looking bastard, and it's just right. It's spooky.
And this is an episode 4 dinosaur only.
This is an episode 4 only. Yeah, this is what's coming at you. Right. But you can actually, if you can defeat it, you can actually capture. Yeah, capture one.
David, have you got a favorite one?
No, the Iron Joe maybe that we kept calling T-Rex because we are incorrigible. But I don't know, all of them.
Okay, right.
I want a pet scrambler. It's easy.
I think that's probably the end of all of the questions that I had. I'm just looking to see if anybody in the chat has got them. A question from Mark. He's saying, is the solo mode for episodes 3 and 4, is it going to be pull friendly? And I think the answer to that is no.
No, by default, because we definitely want a big and full solo mode that lets you experience the whole big thing. there is discussion because John and I have done it in the years between 2 and 3, where for a big enough game we've done a not trying to be as smart as we can solo mode, and we are trying to be as smart as we can solo mode.
Right.
And he has presented a, I want to say streamlined, but more like designed to be as poor friendly as possible from the
Right.
get-go. I think he called it the PG bot. So,
Yeah, because I mean,
we haven't put it through the grinder yet. So,
Right.
is it good enough? Does it fit our components, etc.? So, I can't promise that we'll have it, but there is talk of having one.
Right, okay. I mean, that'd obviously suit me better, but the solo modes for 1 and 2 are fantastic solo modes. They are well outside of my comfort level of what I'm happy with the solo mode. But having played through them, they do recreate that multiplayer game experience, but with an additional challenge. Because one of the things which is a trademark of yours, David, is that you always have some idea of what it might be wanting to do next. It isn't like completely random. You're like, oh, I can see these cards, so I know it's roughly probably going to be doing this, and you can take that into account.
And more importantly, what you do affects its strategy.
Yes.
Like you can counterplay the bot.
Yeah. But yeah, the solo bots for 1 and 2 are fairly complex solo bots, and it's good to know that 3 and 4 are going to be the same, because the people who enjoy that in 1 and 2 are going to have a similar experience for 3 and 4. But yeah, if you are working on a PG friendly version, then yeah, I'd be definitely interested in that.
One of my proudest professional moments in life was when we finished the first draft of the App2 solo rulebook, and somebody on the team said, "Is this too complex? Is this not too complex?" And Victor called me in for the bosses worried meeting, and I told him to go try it out. Victor at that point has never played a solo mode in his life.
Right.
Don't say
He
that.
read through the.
Still, don't tell that.
Secret stories.
He called me back 4.5 hours later saying, I'm going through the rulebook. I'm not getting it. I'm like, no, just you understand the rules. You know how this game goes. You know what your opponent should be doing. Just start playing. 2 hours later, he called me back. I understand everything. I know how to resolve the next turn. This is awesome.
Right.
Like, that's all I have. So it's like, that's it. So that was always the goal, to make you feel like you're playing the game. So obviously for people who have played it multiplayer, learning the solo is just essentially us telling you what we think the bot should do.
Mm-hmm.
For people who learn it solo first, it's arguably a harder experience, which is why I support John's attempts at making human-friendly attempts that are not that smart but let you play the game.
Yeah.
But ultimately, our goal is for everyone, whether they play a 4-player game or a 1-player game or a 2-player game or a 3-player game, find the game smart and fun for the same reasons we find it smart and fun.
Yeah. Yeah. Next question. Will the Dissenters interact with the Chronicle expansion?
They already do.
Right.
I mean, not a lot. You can't really counterplay them. In the App 1 and 2 Chronicle solo mode, they were more like a rising threat that you have to keep ahead of it. So they were like they played the game and they kept pacing on the expansion tracks. I am guessing they're gonna be roughly similar in the new Chronicle as well, simply because adding another trigger level to the bot will make it not just PG unfriendly, but NC-17.
Right, okay. Is the lore book for episode 1 and 2 available in the second edition of episode 1 and 2 from the current campaign?
Yep, it is.
There you go. That's it for all of the questions that we've had in the chat. So my question normally at this point in the interview is to you two. What question did you want me to ask? In other words, was there a question you wanted to answer that I haven't asked? The normal answer is no, but...
I can't think of anything.
Okay, can you tell us any secrets about episode 4 that haven't been shared yet?
Any
if you
secrets about
want
it?
to. You don't have to, but no secrets.
Anything that hasn't been shared yet is because our confidence level is not high enough yet
Oh,
to share
okay.
it.
So it's not that you're
So-
keeping secrets; it's that you don't want to say something that then you rule
But-
out next week as that was a silly idea.
Yeah, we literally had a 2-hour long design session just today. so-
Right. If there was a fifth episode, what would it be about? Says Robin. But I think you answered that. That would be the building the spaceship then.
No, I think Robin is like, we did not talk about this before, but he's either reading my mind or doing something. But no, it's not a fifth episode, Robin. Go away. I'll show you my idea next time I'm there.
Well,
Yeah.
maybe the survivors getting home and trying to fit back into the society that
No.
it's some sort of social experimental game or
It's a game where you get up, you have a shower, you go to work, you
Yeah,
come home,
yeah.
you read the newspaper.
trying to get a day
That
job.
sounds fun.
I do have another question, actually. You've talked about, obviously, this game's been in development and design, whatever, for a total of 8 years. How many other ideas for things to do with the design have you thrown out which you're going to use in other games?
Directly, I don't know. We definitely, at least I can say for myself, I've learned a lot of what works and what doesn't work. Why doesn't it work?
Mhm.
Like every time we tried to do not like game enforced game enforced semi-cooperative mechanisms,
Mhm.
as opposed to self-enforced semi-coop mechanisms, why they kept being thrown out from a Euro game, as in what you can do in a Ameritrasher with hidden traitors you cannot do with a Euro game of this is how you score victory points.
Yeah.
There is one mechanism that I remember throwing out in the process of redesigning half the game from Viking boats to Dino Island that I miss, and I remember it was smart, and one day I'll realize what game to put it in, is that back when the city part was a Viking city, then the payoff that you could use the soldiers for before there were adventures was that you could load them onto boats. And the way
Right.
the boats worked was that there were 4 quadrants, and each of the quadrants, like I don't know, the deck of the ship or whatever. We were not at Minecraft level theming at that point yet. And each of the parts had you need this many soldiers plus this many resources to supply them. And once each boat had 3 or 4 of those contributions you had to fill. On one action, you could fill 1 or 2 contributions. And then once it was filled, there was an action space to launch a boat, which you could only do with your own colored die. And if you did, then that die didn't count into the next assembly, but you got a bonus, and then everybody who contributed to the boat got a payout for their own investment. So it was super selfish. You super did it for I want to get stuff out of this action, but thematically it was very cooperative.
Right.
And that is something that is in the design intentions is extremely present in Perseverance, but this mechanism of you and I start a boat together that then he finishes is not present at this
Right.
moment, although we keep talking about shared adventures and whether they should come back or not.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think adventures as a whole is a pretty neat idea, and that's actually besides the majority and the die placement. That's another overarching thing that's present in basically all of the episodes. Right now I'm fighting for it in episode 4 as well. But yeah, I think that's just in general the way that you set up a sort of limited time passive income for yourself if you really simplify it down. I think that's a really cool idea, and we might just use it somewhere else in some shape or form.
I did like the patrols and the adventures, and I was pleased to see them in episode 3. Although the system did change, because in episode 1 and 2 you were drawing those cards. I can't remember what they were called, but you would draw them cards based on how many soldiers you sent, and they would give you the rewards. But then if you chose more dangerous cards, there was a higher chance of death. That's been streamlined out, and it is now the
so that you have brain space left to plan 4 turns ahead, because after is a more long-term game.
Right. Yeah. Cool. Craig is asking, will you make other completely different games that are episode 1 and 2 in that model, 2 games sharing. But in other, I think what Craig's saying is, are you planning to do, or would you do any other games that follow the same model as Perseverance? In other words, a 2-episode game or even a 4-episode game, or have you learnt after doing this that you don't want to do it again?
Yes and no.
Yeah, it's interesting question. I would say probably not because we regret anything about Perseverance itself, because it needed to look like this. But I think that the way people look at large games, like big boxes and complicated, conceptually complicated games, is a little bit different than they used to a couple of years ago when we started this. If I were to design an episodic game again, I think I would introduce it per episode, rather than 2 episodes in a box. It was not necessarily possible for Perseverance because presenting 2 episodes together was the linchpin to actually show you what this is all about.
Yeah.
But yeah, this basically, I would say that for €1 it needed to be done, and for example for a lighter narrative game or more like an adventure style game, 1 episode per release is the way to go.
Right.
We are discussing what the elevator pitch of TV series as a board games could mean other than this.
Right.
As in, how else could that thought be implemented? Mm-hmm. And if we find one that we're happy with, then you know where we live.
Yep. Tropical Penguin is asking, any plans in which you think episode 1 or 2 could have an expansion?
Does he know that it already does?
3 and 4. Or the Chronicle?
I meant the Chronicle.
Right, yeah. Okay.
Although I do see some more potential in the world, so maybe some spin-off game possibly down the line.
It's not like 5 minutes before this interview started, I didn't say, hey, Victor, I'll send you something in a month or 2.
Yeah, 20 years, Perseverance, 20 years on. We're back to the island.
Or 2,000 years earlier.
Or 2,000 years earlier. You heard it here first. Episode 0.
I'll stick around in the call, David.
I'll call you back from the car. I need to go now.
Right. Well, let's wrap things up. This has been fun. It's always good to chat to you two and see some of the crazy ideas that are going on inside of your heads and the discussions that you have about these. What have we got to look forward to from Mind Clash after Perseverance? Have you got anything you want to mention?
Yeah, we do have something more in store for this year, and an announcement actually in December.
Okay.
So maybe keep your eyes peeled for that.
So watch this space. Follow Mind Clash on social media for that. And obviously, if you're a follower of mine, I will be sharing that because I think I know what it is. That's another secret that I've been keeping, but I won't tell anybody yet.
And of course, if you have and like our games like Perseverance 1 and 2, or maybe Voidfall, then don't forget to go on BGG and give us a rating.
Yes.
Even if it's just an 8
that
or a 9.
It's
okay. It doesn't have to be a 10, but it does help because that's how visibility happens.
It does. Yeah. Go on there and first of all, add the game into the collection. Log a game on there when you play, because a lot of these stats do get used by a lot of people for marketing reasons. And rate the game as well if you're interested. But thank you very much again to you two for your time this afternoon. David, I will see you in just over a week. David is going to be running a demo of Voidfall at GridCon, and there's also going to be some demos of Perseverance Episode 3 at GridCon. So if you are coming to GridCon next weekend, then those games will be there. And Victor, always a pleasure to speak to you. He's gone again. I said, always a pleasure to speak to you.
I was not gone, sorry. Thank you. The pleasure is mutual. Thank you very much for the opportunity. It was fun.
Thank you to everybody for watching. Thank you everybody for all of the questions that have come in and everybody who's asked the questions beforehand. And we'll see you all next time. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.